Welcome back to the 5280 pitch, women's soccer at altitude. Take a breath for a second, Denver. Seriously, take it in because moments like this, they don't come around often in women's soccer. And they definitely don't come around often for expansion clubs that are trying to define who they are before they've even kicked a ball. Lindsey Heaps is coming home. And I want to start right there with the weight of that word, home. Because this isn't just a big signing. This isn't just a U.S. women's national team, a U.S. women's national team captain choosing a new club. This is a Colorado kid raised in the Colorado soccer ecosystem of this state, leaving for the wider world, conquering it, captaining her country, and then intentionally choosing to bring all of that back to Denver Summit, choosing the Denver Summit FC. I am Kate Hansen. This is the 5280 pitch, women's soccer at altitude. Holy cow. I am in awe. I mean, what a Monday morning to wake up to. I was on the phone with my best friend and God lover. She lost me. I was scrolling the socials, and one of my other friends, Haley, she WhatsApped me, and she just sent me the Denver Summit Instagram message, and it said it was just the announcement of Lindsey Heaps, and I was like, there is no way. I mean, let's just think about that for a second. Expansion teams usually beg for credibility. They rent it, they borrow it, they hope it shows up someday in the form of trophies or recognition. Denver Summit, they just signed it. And as a fan, as someone who has watched women's soccer fight for relevance, visibility, and respect in this country, this feels different. This feels like a statement, not just to the league, but to the city. A statement that says, we are not waiting for our turn. We are going to come out of the gates and we are going to be a competitor. Now, Lindsey Heaps' name already carries weight nationally. If you followed U.S. women's national team over the last decade, you know her as a constant. She is a player who never leaves the lineup, as a midfielder who does the work that allows stars to shine. She is a leader who wears the armband not just because she demands it, but because everyone around her trusts her. But here in Colorado, this story hits so close to the chest. Before the Champions League nights, before the World Cup goals, before she was a captain, there was a young player growing up in the Front Range, grinding through youth soccer fields that don't look all that different from the ones that today's Summit Academy kids are training on right now, that my girls are training on right now. And that matters because representation matters, pathways matter, and belief matters. Women's soccer has always been about more than just results. It's about possibility. Every generation stands on the shoulders of the last. And when a player of Lindsey Heaps' stature comes home at the peak of her powers, she doesn't just raise the floor of a roster. She raises the ceiling of an entire community's expectations. I want you to ask yourself this. How many young players in Colorado just saw their dream become more realistic overnight? Let's be clear. This isn't just a ceremonial signing. This isn't a farewell tour. This isn't like, when David Beckham came over and signed with the Galaxy. This is a 4-year commitment from one of the most durable, consistent midfielders the women's game has ever seen. A player whose career has been defined by availability, intelligence, and leadership. A player whose statistical resume quietly stacks up with the best in the world, even if she's never been the loudest voice in the room. That is the kind of cornerstone that you build with. So, over the course of this episode, we are going to do 2 things. I'm going to try to rein in my excitement just a little bit. I don't know if I'll be able to because I am so excited over this. First, we are going to trace Lindsey Heaps' journey, her Colorado roots here, Golden, Colorado, to global stages and back again because that context matters. And second, we are going to dig into some of her numbers, the appearances, the goals, the minutes, the reliability, all of that, because this is a huge, huge signing for the Denver Summit. Denver Summit have planted their flag in the NWSL and saying, we belong here. Holy cow. No player makes more sense to signing as part of the Denver Summit more than Lindsey Heaps. I remember saying to my daughter when we first got a National Women's Soccer League team, she said to me, she said, "Oh, do you think that we could get Lindsey Heaps?" And I said, oh, we actually were at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, and we went to see the U.S. Women's National Team play, and Lindsey Heaps was there signing autographs. She wasn't playing. She was just there signing autographs before the game. And she said, "Mom, do you think that she'll come play for the Summit?" And I said, I don't think so, hon. She plays over in Europe. She's that good that she doesn't even play in the U.S." And she was a little defeated by that remark. And Lindsey Heaps is a big name to come and play over here. And to understand why this signing resonates so deeply in Denver, you have to rewind the tape far earlier than her college highlights or the national team call-ups. You have to go all the way back to Colorado soccer culture itself, a culture that for years quietly punched above its weight in producing tough, intelligent, two-way midfielders who learned to play in thin air, extreme weather, and the wide open spaces. That environment shapes you. It forces you to think faster. It forces you to manage your energy. It forces you to understand the game instead of just overpowering it. And if you've watched Lindsey Heaps play, you can see those roots in everything that she does. So she grew up in Golden, Colorado. She actually played for the Colorado Rush, which is fun because that is the club that my oldest daughter plays for. And she actually played club soccer throughout even high school. She didn't play high school soccer. She played club throughout her youth, and she played for the U17 national team. Women's soccer in the U.S. has always been about persistence, about sticking with it when the infrastructure lagged behind ambition. Lindsey Heaps came of age at a time when the pathway wasn't nearly as polished as it is now. So there was no guarantees of professional stability, no long-term league security. You played because you loved the game, because it gave you something, because you believed it could take you somewhere, even if you didn't know exactly where. Early on, she showed the physical and mental resilience that would become a hallmark of her professional career. Coaches can trust her. Teammates leaned on her. She wasn't just playing, she was anchoring. And that is one part of her game that is still there today. All of that matters because women's soccer history is full of incredibly talented players whose careers were shortened by injuries, burnout, or lack of opportunity. Lindsey Heaps built her career the opposite way, brick by brick, season by season, minute by minute. And after college, the jump to the professional game came quickly. And let's be honest, that transition is brutal. The speed, it increases, the margin for error disappears, and you're suddenly competing against grown professionals who've been doing this longer They're stronger than you, and they're smarter than you. And Lindsey didn't just survive, she adapted. So from the very early years of her club career, she established herself as someone coaches could build around, not necessarily because she was the loudest voice or the biggest personality or the fastest on the field or the biggest personality, though her leadership would come later, but because she brought consistency to a sport that rarely offers it. And this is where I want to pause for a second and talk about that context, because women's professional soccer, especially in the US, has gone through multiple eras of instability. Leagues have folded, teams relocate, contracts, yeah, that's a whole nother episode. Contracts have always been uncertain. And through all of that, players like Lindsey Heaps were the connective tissue, the ones who continued to show up, put in the work, and make the league better simply by being reliable. She didn't chase the spotlight. She earned respect. And her club career took her abroad. And that chapter is extremely important to note, because going overseas isn't just about testing yourself against different competition. It's about expanding your soccer education. People in Spain play different than people in Brazil, who play different in the US, that play different in Italy. Different leagues demand different things. Different cultures emphasize different aspects of the game. Playing in Europe forces you to slow down mentally while speeding up physically. You learn to value space differently. You learn to manage your tempo. And when Lindsey Heaps returned from those experiences, you could see the evolution of her game. Her game had different layers now. She wasn't just reacting, she was anticipating. She wasn't just covering the ground, she was choosing when to cover it. And all of that fed directly into her national team trajectory. And I still can't believe that we have Lindsey Heaps on the Denver Summit. This is so exciting. The U.S. women's national team captain is on the Denver Summit. How exciting is this? Because the U.S. women's national team doesn't just hand out caps. It doesn't care about just, oh, they're going to have really good potential. It cares about performance. And once Lindsey broke into that environment, she stayed. Not because she was irreplaceable in a single skill, but because she was adaptable across roles. She was a defensive midfielder, box-to-box engine, connector between the lines, organizer in possession. She became the kind of player every coach wants on the field when things get messy. I say this to my daughter all the time. You want to be the type of player that your coach says, I can't afford to take her out of the game. That's the type of player you want to be. That reliable player that your coach wants to have in the game. That reliable player. And let's be clear, international soccer is messy. Tournament soccer is chaotic. Games swing on moments. And Lindsey Heaps developed a reputation as someone who could steady a match, who could take the sting out of pressure, who could keep the team connected when opponents tried to disrupt rhythm. And over time, that reliability turned into leadership. The armband, the captain, the C, it didn't arrive overnight. Leadership in women's soccer is earned through trust, and trust is built through consistency, through showing up in big matches, through being accountable, through putting the team first, even when it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. By the time that Lindsey was named captain of the U.S. women's national team, it felt inevitable, not because she demanded it, not because she had the most goals or she was the fastest, but because it made sense. And now here's where the story finds its way back to Denver. Because of her international career, because as her international career soared, as her resume filled with caps and goals and tournaments, she never stopped being connected to where she came from. Colorado wasn't a chapter she closed. It was part of her identity. When the opportunity to bring her career full circle, it wasn't treated as a novelty. It was treated as a serious football decision. Like I said, when the U.S. women's national team played here just recently, this last summer, Lindsey was still here signing autographs, even though she wasn't even she wasn't even playing in the game. She's not coming back to be a symbol. She's coming back to be a player, a leader, a standard setter. And think about what that means inside this locker room. Man, I mean, expansion teams, they're such a fragile ecosystem. Roles, they're not defined yet. Culture isn't established yet. Habits aren't ingrained yet. And when you drop a player like Lindsey Heaps, the captain of the U.S. women's national team, into that environment, someone who has seen literally everything, you accelerate the process by years. Young players learn what professionalism looks like by watching her train. Veterans understand expectations immediately. Coaches have that connection between vision and execution. And beyond the locker room, that ripple effect is massive. Denver has always been a strong women's soccer city. Youth participation is high, the fan base is knowledgeable, but having a hometown player of this caliber choose to anchor the club, man, that sends a message that no marketing campaign ever could. This club is for real. All right, so now that we know a little bit of Lindsey's backstory, let's zoom out and really understand her, because Lindsey is not just emotionally significant for the Denver Summit. She is completely transformative. And the only way to fully appreciate that is to look at her body of work, and not just through the hot takes, but through the consistency and longevity and the impact. And I want to be very intentional here, because this is not about cherry picking some of the highlights. This is about explaining in plain language why coaches trust her, why teammates depend on her, and why Denver just changed its competitive trajectory before playing a single match. And I want to start with availability, because in soccer, especially women's soccer, availability might be the most underrated skill of all. Over the course of her professional and international soccer career, Lindsey Heaps has been remarkably durable. Season after season, she logs heavy minutes, not just appearances, minutes, starts, full matches, tournament after tournament, season after season. This matters more than almost any other single stat I could give you today, because midfield is one of the most physically and mentally demanding positions on the field. Midfielders do not get to hide. They are involved in everything. Defensive transitions, offensive buildup, pressing, recovery runs. And when a midfielder can be trusted to handle that load year after year, it changes how a team is built. And for the Summit, that reliability is gold. Expansion teams often struggle with rhythm because lineups can change constantly. Injuries force reshuffling. Chemistry takes a ton of time. By getting Lindsey Heaps, that short circuits that entire problem. She is the kind of player you pencil in first every week, and then you can put in anyone you want around her. That alone gives Denver a head start. Now let's talk about production, because while Lindsey Heaps has never been marketed as a pure goal scorer, the numbers around her show a player that contributes steadily across every phase of the game. At the club level, she has consistently chipped in goals from midfield. Not streaky bursts, but in reliable totals. So late runs in the box, well-timed finishes, penalty responsibilities when needed. These aren't accidents, they are product of intelligence. She understands space. She understands timing. and she understands when a moment requires her to step forward. For fans, this is really important to understand. Goals from midfield stretch defenses. They force opponents to make choices. You can't just focus on the forwards when someone like Lindsey Heaps is arriving late with purpose. And for a new club still figuring out its attacking identity, that threat adds an entirely new layer of unpredictability that defenses hate. And defensively, her impact is even more noticeable. She's not a reckless ball winner. She doesn't just fly into tackles just to make a point. Instead, she excels at positioning. She is going to do an excellent job of cutting into the passing lanes, anticipating the danger before it fully develops, winning the ball cleanly and keeping it moving. This is the kind of defending that doesn't always show up in the highlight reel, but it shows up in control. Matches where the opponent never quite feels comfortable. Matches where momentum dies quietly because the midfield is locked down. And when you watch, if you watch enough soccer, this shows up in the passing numbers. If you can win these matches in the midfield, you will own the passing game. Lindsey Heaps is a connector. Her completion rates are consistently high. She will find that open player, not because she plays it safe, but because she understands risk. She knows when to recycle the possession and when to push the tempo forward. She links the defenders to the attackers. She provides those outlet plays, how to keep the teams from panicking. And for an expansion team, panic is the enemy. Again, keep in mind, everyone on this team is going to be finding that momentum, finding that rhythm. When teams are new, they often tend to rush things. They force passes, they chase moments. A midfielder like Lindsey is going to give you that patience. She gives you the structure. She gives you that default setting when the game gets chaotic. Let's talk about that international impact too, because this is where her resume truly separates her. Earning a single cap for the U.S. women's national team is an achievement, and we're so fortunate that we have a number of other players on the summit that have earned that U.S. women's national team cap. Earning dozens is rare. Earning over 100 and captaining the side, that puts you in an elite company. That tells you everything you need to know about trust. National team environments are unforgiving. You are surrounded by the best players in the world. Every training session is competitive. Every mistake is magnified. And yet, Lindsey Heaps has remained a constant presence throughout multiple coaching cycles, tactical shifts, and generational transitions. That adaptability is key. She has played in different systems. She's partnered with different midfield profiles. She has adjusted her role depending on what the team needed. Sometimes sitting deeper, sometimes pushing higher, sometimes serving as the emotional anchor when younger players were just finding their footing. That versatility is exactly what Denver Summit needs right now as we gain our footing, because this system is going to be evolving. The roster is going to be changing. Injuries inevitably are going to happen. And having a player that is going to allow us to adapt without losing effectiveness is invaluable. And last but not least, definitely not least, leadership. This is the hardest thing to quantify, but it is absolutely the most important. Captains aren't just ceremonial figures. We saw with the Colorado Avalanche when Gabe Landeskog was out for 3 years. A lot of people said, oh, well, somebody else on the Avs should just take the C. Nobody else wanted to take the C when Gabe was out. Now that he's back, the Avalanche look unstoppable. Now that he's back, it is incredible what a captain can do. On the field, they are decision makers. They're problem solvers. They're the ones communicating with referees, organizing teammates, and setting the emotional tone. Lindsey Heaps has done that on the biggest of stages in her sport. World Cups, Olympic tournaments, high-pressure qualifiers, rivalry matches. She has been there. She's felt it. She's navigated it. Now imagine that experience walking into the Denver locker room filled with players eager to define a new club identity. Imagine the confidence that brings, the calm, the sense that someone in the room has answers because they've seen the questions before. And here's where I really want us to zoom out and connect all these dots. The Summit didn't just sign a midfielder. They signed a standard, a player whose career baseline is excellence, whose expectation is professionalism, whose presence raises the daily bar in training. Man, for young midfielders on the roster, this is a masterclass waiting to happen. Watching how she positions herself, how she conserves energy, how she communicates, how she chooses moments. Those lessons, they do not come from whiteboards. They come from just being in her presence. And how lucky for us, Denver fans. This is a chance to watch the game differently. I can't get over some of these message boards on Facebook and Instagram. We all see it, especially once the stadium passed. I saw, like on Denver 7 Facebook page, like they announced that the stadium had passed, and there was people on there saying like, why didn't they? There was plenty of other good stadiums, like why didn't they just use the Rapid Stadium? Or good luck, they probably can't even sell out the stadium over off of 6th and Kipling. I am sorry. In what hole do these people live in? The Summit has already sold 15,000 season tickets. How lucky are we that we get to see a U.S. women's national team, an Olympian, every single week? This is mind-blowing to me as to how naive can you be? We are so lucky as Summit fans to be able to see Lindsey Heaps week in and week out for 4 years. Because once you start watching Lindsey Heaps, you stop watching just the ball. You start watching spaces. You start noticing when danger disappears before it forms. You start appreciating the small decisions that tilt matches subtly but decisively. And that is the mark of a great midfielder. And I want to talk about legacy because this signing isn't just about the next 4 years. By bringing Lindsey Heaps home, the Summit is anchoring its identity in intelligence, durability, and leadership. And that is a powerful foundation. It sends a message about the kind of soccer this club wants to play and the kind of culture it wants to build. This isn't just a flash first. This is a substance first signing. Lindsey Heaps gives Denver that substance from day one. She gives them credibility with opponents. She gives them confidence internally. She gives the fans a reason to believe from day one. And when you take a step back and look at the full picture, the hometown roots, the global career, the statistical consistency, the leadership resume, it becomes crystal clear to me that this isn't just one of the biggest signings in Denver soccer history. It's one of the most intentional. Because Lindsey Heaps signing with Denver isn't just a roster move. It isn't just a press release. It's not just a win on paper. It is a moment that collapses time. Past, present, and future into something tangible that this city can rally around. Women's soccer fans here have always known that this market mattered. We've shown up for college matches, international friendlies, watch parties at odd hours. We've built communities without always having a professional badge to point to. And now the sport is meeting the city where it's been all along. Think about what this means for the next generation of Colorado players. I literally wanted to go, and when I saw the news about Lindsey Heaps signing, I wanted to call my daughter's school and have her get taken out of class so I could tell her about it. That is how excited I was about this signing. Lindsey Heaps is the cultural cornerstone for this club. the player who defines the standards before habits have even been formed, the one whose presence answers questions without words. How do we train? How do we compete? How do we respond when things don't go our way? You don't have to guess when someone in the room has already lived it. Lindsey Heaps is going to change how fans watch this game. She's going to change how opponents prepare. She's going to change how young players imagine their future. And she is going to change how this club introduces itself to the league. So as we look ahead to the Denver Summit's first season, remember this moment, folks. Remember where it started. Remember the significance of the hometown captain choosing to build something new, choosing the Denver Summit, that expansion team in her home state of Colorado, choosing something new instead of chasing something easy, because years from now, when this club has a history, when the banners and the memories stack up, this will be one of those before and after moments. This is the signing that told us exactly who Denver Summit wanted to be. That's it for today's episode of the 5280 Pitch, Women's Soccer at Altitude. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. There are some fun interviews coming up in future episodes. We're getting closer and closer to day one of the season. We're going to finally have some matches and some analysis to talk about. Until then, we are going to continue doing deep dives into the Denver Summit players so you can get to know all the players on the rosters. Check us out on YouTube. We're on all the socials at 5280 Pitch. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Check us out at the5280pitch.com. Until then, if you're excited, if you're emotional, if you're already imagining that first home match with Lindsey Heaps, this is what belief sounds like. This is what momentum feels like. And as always, thanks for being a part of this community. We're just getting started, and I can't wait to keep building this together.